Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Well, Kyoto Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, we've been having some pretty interesting news the past couple of days regarding free agency. You know, it's kind of crazy. I felt like my free agency days were behind me in terms of what we're covering on the channel, but it feels like the Chargers have some unfinished business here after bringing in DJ Chark just last week. We got a Bud Dupree sighting for the Chargers in terms of maybe bringing in guys, veteran dudes to come help round out some positions, which is pretty interesting because if I'm being honest with you guys, I don't know if I would have gone the route of a DJ Chark. Just kind of feels like the wide receiver room was starting to see some potential with all of the draftees coming in. Edge was another one of those positions where I'm like, I don't know how much we need in terms of depth. The fact that we've got Bosa and Tooley and Mack and even Chris Rumpf, like it feels kind of crazy to think that we could be bringing in yet another piece to this defense. But it does kind of speak to, the Chargers changing systems, changing schemes, wanting to make sure that premium depth is at very important positions on the roster because some positions, man, without them, the whole thing falls apart. And Edge is going to be one of those for the defense. So this got me thinking, the Chargers may have some unfinished business in terms of other positions on the roster, and I kind of want to do this once and for all. The final free agent, push for the Chargers, the final free agent targets for the Bolts, the finishing touches on the roster that the Chargers could bring in. So I got 10 guys that I think the Chargers should be targeting for free agency to bring in to help round out the roster. And honestly, some of these positions could end up being very important day one starters for the Bolts. So before we do jump in, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $250. That's right. We are upping the ante. $250 as a match right there. Super exciting stuff. Thank you to Underdog Fantasy. Newcomers, check out the Anthony Edwards special for this weekend. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small minute of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification. Helps me out a lot. We are almost to 50K any day now. Lights, camera, action. Here we go again, baby. Free agency for the 10th time this offseason. It was actually one that I kind of began to think about a little bit more in terms of like, you know what? We are building a new team revolving around, Jim Harbaugh and the new coordinators. It does make sense that, you're going to want to take your time bringing in the right kind of pieces. And the Chargers seem to still be on the lookout for at least a couple of more. Now, before everybody in the comments like, Director, we don't have the money. Well, yeah, that was our situation, maybe a couple of months ago. Nowadays, the Chargers are swimming in cap space. We have close to $30 million to spend. Of course, I would like to see a majority of that go into the offseason, maybe roll over into 2025. Either way, I think the Chargers are set up to bring in one or two more pieces to help complete the vision for Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. And again, some of these positions, guys, I have to stress, they do need some help. The Chargers are going to be building this team over the next several years with Jim Harbaugh. We're going to see guys come in via the draft. But for right now, I still do think the Chargers are very competitive this season. Watch out for the Jim Harbaugh-led Chargers. And I want to give that team as good a shot as anybody to go in there and make a playoff run. So some of these guys are going to definitely help that situation out. So let's start with these top 10 dudes I think the Chargers should be looking at. Now we're going to start with Xavier Howard. Some of you guys are going to think, Director, why is this guy so far down on your list? You know what? He's on the list. Okay, I get it. The reason for that being, though, Xavier Howard, of course, the Chargers do need cornerback help pretty desperately. And I would say the biggest thing that we kind of need is maybe more competition for outside corner. And even guys that can maybe play a little bit of slot as well. Either way, the Chargers probably would be wise to be looking at least one more ad via free agency in cornerback. What I mean by one more is that we did get Christian Fulton, who does have a similar narrative as that we're going to speak here with Xavier Howard in terms of, this is a redemption signing. We've seen some good things out of Xavier Howard, of course, being that 10 interception guy from so many years ago, very many years now removed from that season. There is a shot, though, that in a new situation, a new setting, he might be able to pop off a little bit. We don't need him to be 10 interception, Xavier Howard, but we do need somebody out there to be competing for snaps with the Christian Fulton and of course our other guys. We brought in some, draftees in terms of Cam Hart and Tareem Still, but we need to see that position beefed up just a little bit in terms of, yes, depth, but I think more immediately we need help in terms of starting cornerback competition. So Xavier Howard, to me, again, he's going to be a redemption signing. It's not a guy that I'm expecting to come in and steal the number 1 corner position or even number 2 corner position for the Chargers right away. No, he's not been particularly great since like 2021. In that season, I think he logged like 5 interceptions. And since then, that, defining trait of his game has since fizzled away. Not really a big interception guy anymore. He struggled in coverage. It feels like his best days are behind him. But again, when you enter into the fold of what the Chargers could be offering in terms of, system and scheme, there may be an opportunity for Xavier to resurrect the twilight years of his career. And of course, not the oldest guy on this list, but certainly not getting any younger either. Probably one of the good final shot destinations for Xavier. I've seen a couple other places like the Rams, maybe the Steelers, that wouldn't be a bad fit. But I think the Chargers certainly need to be added to that list as well, considering the cornerback room doesn't look as awful as I thought it would starting the season, but I still think it needs help. I'm excited to see Cam Hart. I'm excited to see these other guys, but I do want a little bit more competition at corner. And I think Xavier Howard's definitely not a bad place to start. He would be coming in, again, all these guys would be coming in on pretty cheap deals, all right? The ship has sailed for a lot of these dudes for big contracts. Xavier Howard's going to be one of those dudes that I think ends up signing a prove-it deal. And wouldn't be a bad one for the Chargers. Definitely not a bad one. Now at number 9. Let's bring in Marcus Peters, huh? Now, a lot of people like Xavier Howard, okay? Because, again, this is not going to be the free agent video that's like, oh, my God, director, yes, absolutely. I would say at least the top 5 guys on here. You're looking at depth. You're looking at help. You look at competition. Again, kind of a similar role to Xavier Howard, but I would say he's had a little bit more recent success than Xavier Howard has in terms of his quality of play and coverage. That's what the Chargers really need. We need a big guy on the outside who can cover well. I don't know about Christian Fulton. He could be good. It could be bad. I view him like Xavier Howard, like he's coming here to prove the doubters wrong. And as much as I'm rooting for him, I want a guy that has maybe a little bit more recent success on his track record. Marcus Peters does bring that kind of. He's not bad in coverage still. He's got decent size in him too. I think he's like 6 feet tall. But the biggest reason I want this guy, I think, is pretty obvious, right? Everybody's calling the Chargers lately the Ravens of the West, which is totally fine by me at this point because the Ravens have had a fantastic defense. Their offense shares a lot of schemes that I agree with, a lot of concepts I agree with that I think the Chargers will have some success with there. Either way, I think Marcus Peters, first and foremost to me, could add some stability to the new Ravens way on defense while also adding some competition for outside corner. You're going to see a few corners on this list, guys. I'm not going to lie. This video should be rebranded to free agent corners the Chargers could bring in for a tryout to start on the outside. The Chargers, definitely have some options out there. Marcus Peters, Xavier Howard, these guys, let's see what they got. Let's bring them in. But for the most part, we're just kind of looking for competition on the outside. Maybe they help unearth something special in like a Christian Fulton, right? Cam Hart might have some nice, competition there as well. Let's move on to number 8. Another corner, shocker. But this one, I feel he's higher on my list because of the potential of versatility here. I think you can get Marcus Peters, Xavier Howard in the slot if you want, but Adarius Jackson feels like he's been working up to this moment. He's been a pretty decent corner in his time for the Giants, and was it the Titans? I don't remember. Either way, he looks pretty good. He looks pretty good in terms of his readiness to play inside and outside. I like the versatility. He had a really good second half of the season last year. But what is going to reflect on his grade more so, which is unfortunate for him, is the disaster of what happened to start the season off. Now, I think they started him in the slot, and because of the new scheme or system that they were, rolling out with out there, it feels like Adoree saw a lot of unfortunate matchups, right? They were blitzing like crazy out there, and it feels like that set him up with a lot of one-on-one assignments that maybe weren't in his favor, and that is going to reflect heavily in his grade. You look outside of that, though, and in the second half of the season, he was actually pretty good, pretty decent. He even plays a little bit of safety out there, too. I feel like Adoree brings the versatility that I want from a backup DB. I want the position to be DB, not corner, if we can help it. He can play slot. especially if they can play in the box. Like, I like a lot of what that sort of depth can offer. Of course, Adoree could come in here absolutely and compete for, day one slot, work. But I do feel like the Bolts would benefit. Again, you're going to see this all over this list from another corner signing. This is the perfect kind of signing, in my opinion. Versatile, can play, several different positions on the field, and he still brings some of the production that you're hoping for in the position that does need some rounding out for the Chargers. Let's move on from corner for a second here, right? At least for a second, right? Let's get into the trenches for a minute. Dalton Ryner. It's going to be another guy that I think the Chargers may benefit from looking at. Now, the offensive line looks pretty interesting right now. I think one of the newest, things to come out in the past couple of days is the fact that we've seen some photos of Trey Pipkins lining up at guard, right? It feels like the Chargers are finally taking that Madden mentality where we get the best guy with the highest overall to fill every single position. Jim Harbaugh wants the best 5 guys out there, is what he keeps saying. The best 5 guys. And like we were talking about, at the top of the show with Kus Campbell, some positions just help the whole thing work. The whole machine runs on the idea of this position performing. And those are the positions, typically, you're going to want some of the best depth on the roster. I think that's what I see in a Dalton Ryner. You need the very best depth that you can get for one of the most important positions on your roster. And offensive line is that for the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh going forward. He had a bit of a shaky, stint out there with the Minnesota Vikings, maybe a bit of an awkward fit, but I still see him as a very serviceable pass-protecting guard. Maybe doesn't fit the mauler kind of run, blocker that we're looking for, but at the same time, you need a guy in there that can play depth. The Chargers, in terms of depth, they have some okay ones in there. Jamari Sawyer might be taking snaps on the outside as a backup. Who knows? They're trying to find the right fit for everybody, but if you want premium depth, I think the Chargers now have that on the outside with either, Trey Pipkins or Sawyer. I want somebody on the inside as well. I think Dalton Ryner is not a bad idea, and is a guy that could compete for, starting work as well. So Dalton Ryner, definitely not a bad option there. Again, all these guys would be presumably pretty cheap fits here as well. It's pretty cheap contracts. Let's move on to number 6, and this one I cannot believe he's on my list. Like, what the heck, dude? I remember watching this guy play when I was a much younger spy director. Kus Campbell. What? How does this man keep doing it, dude? How does this man keep doing it? I think he's going into age 38 in this season for him. He's been one of the most consistent guys in his time in Arizona and Jacksonville, and recently it was the Falcons, right? He was there last season. And of course, another big reason I want him is because of the uniform he's wearing in this photo. He was with the Baltimore Ravens for 3 seasons. It was at this point I feel like a lot of people were starting to not sour, but come down on the hype from Kus Campbell. Like, okay, the dude's old, right? He was like, at that time, I think he was like 34, 35. Like, all right, it's time to start slowing down. No, the dude just kept it going, man. That engine was not stopping. And I think the tune of 7 sacks last year as a rotational player does speak to the kind of value and tool that the Chargers are going to get on defense. It's exactly what I want. Again, if you're talking about you're getting yourself some depth at an important position, because again, the Minter defense, it's very hard to get that defense off the ground without a good pass rush. Okay, Kus Campbell is exactly the kind of dude I'm looking for. Of course, I think Cal Van Noy was a dude that we were very excited about the potential in a return here. He plays a little bit more hybrid, but Campbell, get that force on the line, instill that Baltimore way, even further with some more experience in that system. I don't know, man. It would be a super cheap contract. He still has it somehow, and I'd be willing to instill that just, for depth purposes. I think that it'd be exciting to see him on the roster. I can't believe that he's still out there producing in the league. 7 sacks last season is absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Let's move on back to the DBs, okay? Some of you guys may be shocked to even see this position on the list. Some of you guys are going to say, hey, man, this makes absolute sense. And I'm going to be one of those guys that's preaching the add to safety on the roster. All right, now JT Woods, and is it AJ Finley, the backup guys that we see on the roster now? Those guys, I think, are still kind of unknown to me. Finley maybe has a little bit more, idea of what his game is going to be. I have no idea what's going on with JT Woods. The dude was just gone last season. Who knows? They could do a whole Netflix documentary series on what happened to JT Woods. Where did JT Woods go? The missing JT Woods of 2023. It just seemed really strange to me. And it screams how important backup safety really is to this team. And I think the biggest reason for that is because of how versatile the two guys you got playing up top are. Derwin and Alohi both are excellent in run support. Run them in the slot, whatever you want to do. Those guys, you want to move around. And in the meantime, who's patrolling up top? Who's maybe, while Derwin's up there, who's in the box if you need another box safety? That's why I like guys like Eddie Jackson. I want to be completely transparent with this one. This is a guilty pleasure pick right here. I love Eddie Jackson. I know he's not the same player he once was with the Bears. I think we're talking all the way back to like 2019 when he was like really rocking. But he's had a couple of decent seasons. Last year, maybe not so much, but the year before it was pretty good. And I think, again, when you're asking him to play in a specific role like the Chargers are offering, where we need a guy that is playing in combination with Derwin James, in combination with Alohi Gilman, I like the potential here. Throw Eddie in the same positions that you would those guys, up top, down low, in the slot, around you go. Or in the box, I should say. Like, that's pretty exciting. That's pretty exciting stuff to think about. And if Eddie Jackson can harness even 60% of what made him special to the Bears back in the day, I think that it would be a solid signing for the Chargers. And it's one where, again, the idea of another safety just gets me more and more pumped at the idea of how complete and dangerous this defense could be. Because on defense, I see a couple of weapons, right? Edge is going to be a weapon. Getting to the quarterback, that's a weapon position. But I view safety very much so as a weapon for the Los Angeles Chargers going forward. Derwin is a weapon. Alohi is a weapon. How many forced fumbles did that guy cause, the past couple of seasons? I want another guy that could be a weapon for this safety group, because as much as they move around, as much as we might see three of them on the field at once, who knows? I think it's not a bad idea. Eddie Jackson is one that I'm kind of pounding the table for. I think there's better safety options, if I'm being honest. But at the same time, I think the potential of him bringing that physicality to the Chargers is super exciting. Now let's move over here to number 4. Bud Dupree, who was just listed at the top of the video. This guy's officially visited with the Chargers, by the way. Okay, like we saw at the top, Chargers are looking at more free agents. Bud Dupree, his name is on the short list for Joe Hortiz. And that kind of, rose my eyebrow a little bit. That's why this video is coming out at all. You think I want to come out here and talk more free agents? No, I thought we were done with that. But the fact that this is at all even a thought has got me thinking a little bit more as to what this new Chargers culture, this Chargers, way of doing business is going to look like. It's a lot different than in the past, right? If in the past you see guys, the no names, the guys that I'm like, oh, okay, let's go look them up together, that Tom Telesco would bring in and year out. All of a sudden, we're starting to see some names, man. Like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a lot of us are against the pick. I kind of am too, but I know who he is. Like, he's definitely one of those top tier guys in terms of a couple of different things like speed and size. Bud Dupree, you could easily grab a no-name edge player to come in and fill in the depth, for the Chargers. But no, I'm seeing a pretty established player here. And it kind of screams, what the change might look like in the future and why the Chargers can never be written off as a team that won't go after that guy. This year, dudes, I think the only thing stopping us from going after more big names or more, players that I feel would produce at a high level is the money. You know what's happening next season? Actually, I wasn't planning on showing this. Put a bookmark in this for a second. Let's go back here. You know how much money we got going into next season? Let's actually go into the calculator real quick. The Chargers in 2025 are working with 80 mil. And if any of this rolls over, you're talking closer to 100 mil, right? That's absolutely bonkers. That's absolutely bonkers. So watch out for the Los Angeles Chargers to be one of those teams to look out for in free agency starting in 2025, which is kind of insane to think about because the Bolts have the Justin Herbert contract ramping up and everything, but we've got money. A lot of the moves that we made in terms of the sacrifices we made, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and then I think, Khalil Mack is not going to be on the against the cap here the next couple of seasons. Like, it's freeing up money to bring in dudes. And I think the Baltimore Ravens have been a really good example of what happens when you bring in some quality names. So I don't know. I'm excited to see how that ramps up. So now let's go back to Bud Dupree. Okay, Bud Dupree, I think that's one of the best options out there if you want a backup edge, right? If you want a guy that's going in more often than not than he's sitting on the bench, I like Bud a lot. Like his player or his teammate counterpart in Kus Campbell last season, he racked up some nice numbers. Campbell with the 7 sacks, bit older. Dupree with 8 sacks last season. And what we're going to call the revenge tour, right? He's on a revenge tour. He had, I think, a 2021 and 2022 season with a bit of injury problems. He came back at 23 and really brought the heat, man. Like, literally, figuratively, like, he was awesome. He's got a very nice combo of size, speed, strength coming off the edge. I feel like something the Chargers are going to very much so covet. And, you know, I think his speed offers him a little bit more, you know, versatility for what Jesse Minter may require from the edge position. I like this signing a lot. Nothing against Chris Rumpf, but, you know, maybe that's the kind of line or the kind of edge that you're looking for in the Chargers of the past. But Dupree certainly is the kind of guy you want for the Chargers of the future. Of course, he's not going to be sticking around for very long. He's a bit older in his age, but he's definitely the kind of player I think would sync well with the Chargers. And again, premium depth. That is how important the edge position is for the Chargers. Let's move into the top 3, man. And no shocker here. I got some DBs. I got to throw at you guys. We're going to start here with another cornerback. Okay. And it's, again, if I had to label like the top position that we need to address still in free agency, it's corner. Okay. Steven Nelson. This one's not going to wow everybody. This one's not going to be the biggest shocker, but I think Steven Nelson is still a starter in the league. Especially when you're talking about a Chargers team that needs another outside guy. Steven Nelson can play on the inside as well. I think he can be pretty versatile in that way, but I feel like what the Chargers are asking for, what the Chargers are needing at this point is competition with Christian Fulton and maybe a guy in the slot. And Steven Nelson kind of does it all. He's been in every system that you can think of. Like, he's been that journeyman of corner for many years now, and he's been very solid wherever he's gone. He's not been a superstar, but he's been very good. He's been very serviceable, and that's what we need right now. Let's buy ourselves some time to go get the next corner of the future. 2025, that's going to be a position that the Chargers are certainly going to be considering in the first round, right? I would be shocked if the Chargers didn't take, you know, a top 3 round corner in 2025. But until then, we needed somebody to hold down the fort, and Steven Nelson is probably as reliable as it gets in terms of his consistency, in terms of what he's brought several different systems over his time in the NFL. He's been great, you know, and I could see him competing for outside corner. I honestly think you're adding some awesome depth, but you're also adding some pretty solid coverage on the outside where the Chargers in the AFC West, we're going to need it. And that's why I keep pounding the table for another corner. We need another corner. It's a tough division out there, and we need to make sure we're as prepared as possible. So Steven Nelson, he would be one that I feel is like the humble yet very serviceable, you know, starter potential signing if they were still to go that route in 2024. All right, Steven Nelson, not bad. In my top 2, these are going to be some names. Be some big names I'm sure you guys would be like all about if we saw on Twitter tomorrow that the Chargers would sign this guy or that guy, you guys would be like, oh my God, what? This is amazing. At number 2, we've got a man that's been wreaking havoc on the Chargers and the rest of the AFC West for years now. A man that I have come to hold in high regard in the same, you know, stratosphere as guys like Derwin James and Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons, I don't understand what the disconnect was between him and the Broncos. That's not the director's Broncos. I don't know what's going on in the back end with that team. But it's absolutely nuts to me to think that he didn't retire a Denver Bronco. This is one of the best Broncos I've seen in my time, you know, watching this team, you know, put up against the Chargers and the kind of, you know, game that he brought. Like, it's absolutely insane to think that he's still out there in free agency. Why is he still out there in free agency? Was there an injury I don't know about? You go out there and slap somebody? I don't know. Like, I don't understand why Simmons is not on a roster right now. He's absolutely fantastic. And Chargers fans don't need much explanation on that. We've seen this man destroy us for years and years and years. This is one of those premium coverage / run support guys, very much so in that Derwin James echelon and style of safety. I cannot imagine a more lethal combo of safeties on the Chargers right now. Imagine up top, in the box, in the slot, whatever. You had Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, Justin Simmons. You might as well sign him up to be a linebacker. He's that physical. This dude is one of the best to do it in the NFL when it comes to run support, and the Jesse Minter defense needs run support DBs. As many as you can get. And I feel like this would be a great destination, a great revenge destination even for Justin Simmons, and one where just like the dream of like putting together a Madden Ultimate team of Justin Simmons and Derwin James. It comes to life, and it's absolutely insane to think about the potential of them together. Like, if you want physicality, you pair up those 6'2 safeties together and let them bring the hurt. Travis Kelce's going to be running for his life. Don't body slam me, Justin. Don't body slam me, Derwin. That's your new reality, pal. Because the Chargers DBs, they're getting physical. They're getting very physical. And that's why I feel like safety is another weapon to use on this team. And Justin Simmons, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best weapons on defense available for the Bolts to target in free agency still today. I think he's amazing. I think that we know his game. I think that the potential with him at the Chargers and Derwin and Alohi and even the linebackers, like it's exciting to think about. He would be a very easy thing to see working in this offense, or in this defense, excuse me. That's why as much of a weapon I view him as. Justin Simmons to me would be kind of a slam dunk. But the biggest slam dunk, and I don't know how many people are going to be shocked by this, if I had the power to sign one Chargers player, I have the control. I have the free agency money and moves. If it were up to me and I were calling the shots, this man would be a Los Angeles Charger today. And Stefon Gilmore. Okay. Now, yeah, there's a lot of upside to finding other guys that you saw on this list, like Steven Nelson, Adarius Jackson, maybe even a Marcus Peters. But I think I want a guy that I trust with the starting responsibilities on the outside. Give me Stefon Gilmore, who's been a staple of consistency, even in his older age. There was just a tweet that came out a couple of days ago, a little statement from him saying that he's not concerned about the age, that he's that everybody's, still impressed by what he's been producing the past couple of years. After he left New England, which is fair to say, I think the Chargers of all teams can definitely attest to the curse of picking up ex-Patriots DBs. Everyone wrote him off after New England, and he's just been so good ever since then. Like, he's been great. He's been fine. He's been fantastic, as a matter of fact. And he's the kind of player that really fits my narrative. Like, what I want as a Chargers fan is to see, like I said with Steven Nelson, a guy that can step in, produce in a very competitive and high-flying AFC West, bringing that stability to the position, while also just buying us time to get to next year's draft, to get to the future of the position. And in the meantime, I don't want the position to be that weak. I don't want the position to be that vulnerable. And Stefon Gilmore is the armor for 2024 that I'm looking for. Yeah, he had a slight drop last year, but overall, I think he was as reliable as you can ask for. I love the fit. I love the commitment. It would be a low cost, 1, maybe 2-year contract. Cheap 1-year deal, adds instant outside starter potential. Like, this is the kind of move I'm doing if I'm running the show. And it's because Stefon Gilmore, to me, is one of the last remaining starting corners available in free agency, and the Chargers just kind of need it right now. I want to see what Christian Fulton has to offer. I want to see what the rookies have to offer, but I also need the sense of relief to knowing that we've got a guy there, man. Like Patrick Mahomes versus Stefon Gilmore. Sure, it doesn't sound like super great, but I think it sounds a little bit better than Christian Fulton or one of the rookies. Now, they don't have the potential, but like, big thing to ask. It's a big thing to ask those players to go out and defend against some of the craziness that we're going to see in this season. Right. And when I say AFC West, I mainly mean Patrick Mahomes. Like, Bo Nix will be interesting. Who knows what the Raiders are doing anymore? Is it Gardner Minshew? Outside of that, though, I want one of the best. And one of the biggest things that we're going to cover here in the next week, by the way, I got a whole thing set up for next week. Get ready for that. The schedule's coming out. Okay. And one big reason that I think I want Stefon Gilmore, and I want some of these guys, like, we can sign maybe 2 more dudes. I think there's 90 spots available. I think the Chargers have filled all but 2 of them. The reason I want to fill those spots with premium talent, or at least pretty good depth, good maybe starter potential guys, is because of the schedule. The schedule, dudes, I don't know if you've seen this. The Chargers have one of the easiest schedules that we've seen in a long time. I think the first or second, maybe third, I don't know. The top 3 in terms of easiest schedules in 2024. I don't want to waste that. The Chargers, yeah, we're building something. We're building a new Jim Harbaugh thing, but my God, if we have this opportunity in front of us to get to the postseason on the back of a bit of an easier schedule, I want to be as ready for that as possible. I don't want to be building. I don't want to be retooling. I want to be there now. I want to make sure that at very minimum, we've got a Stefon Gilmore there at cornerback 2 instead of trying things out, and seeing how camp goes. Like, that could certainly be exciting, and who knows what's going to happen. Maybe that's the Chargers' plan, and we see that come to fruition, and maybe it works out for the best, and Christian Fulton sees a nice, bounce-back season. But I don't want to waste the opportunity of a nice schedule. They come far and few between, okay? You guys know this. Last season was one of the toughest schedules we've had in a minute. That sucked, and we loaded up for that year. The Chargers went all in. We pushed our chips forward, and we got punched in the mouth. Now that we got one of the easiest schedules, I want to make sure that the roster is well-rounded, that as we figure out the new systems and the new schemes and stuff, that the Chargers are still very competitive and that we're winning games and we get to the postseason. That's why players like this are still very much so at the top of my priority in free agency. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We're all buying time until the schedule release. I think it's coming up on Wednesday. If you guys want to see my instant reaction to that, I will be on Bleacher Report that evening for the release of the schedule to get my instant reaction there. And then afterwards, of course, we'll come out here and do a video kind of breaking down what things could look like. But again, if we can beef up the roster just a little bit before kickoff, I think we want to take full advantage of the opportunity we have in that schedule for 2024. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Give me Stefon Gilmore, man. I think it's time.